Old Testament lesson this morning is 2 Samuel 11, the story of David and Bathsheba. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, "I am pregnant." So David sent this word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. David was told Uriah did not go home. So he asked Uriah, "Haven't you just come from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are all staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." Then David said to him, "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, "Put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him, so he will be struck down and die." So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at a place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite was killed. Joab sent David a full account to the battle. He instructed the messenger, "When you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up, and he may ask you, 'Why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know they would shoot arrows from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, the son of Bethsheth? Didn't a woman drop an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died in Thebez? Why did you get so close to the wall?' If he asks you this, then say to him, 'Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead.'" The messenger set out, and when he arrived, he told David everything Joab had sent him to say. The messenger said to David, "The men overpowered us and came out against us in the open, but we drove them back to the entrance of the city gate. Then the archers shot arrows at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's men died. Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." David told the messenger, "Say this to Joab, 'Don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it.' Say this to encourage Joab." When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. Our New Testament gospel reading is John 8, verses 31 through 36. Please stand in honor of the gospel. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been the slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free?" Jesus replied, "Very truly I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
I was driving home late from hockey one night by myself. It was really cold out. I was on this side of Carbondale about the fish hatchery, and there was a guy out hitchhiking, and he was not properly dressed for the coldness of the night, so I stopped and picked him up. I said, "Well, why are you out here? It's cold." And he didn't even have a coat on. He said, "Well, I was down in Carbondale. I was visiting my girlfriend, but her husband came home. And I had to leave pronto." I'm like, "I'm sure you did. And you're lucky you're not dead on the side of the road." From the headlines this past week, it appears the coach of the Patriots has gotten himself into some trouble. He's a married man caught with another woman. I'm not sure why people are surprised. We all know the Patriots are cheaters. That's bad, I know. I took this out a couple of times, and I kept putting it back in. Oh, man. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing changes, especially when it comes to sin. The center of our story today is David the king has an affair with Bathsheba, another man's wife. The main points of the story are this. It was the springtime of the year, and the countries were in the habit of sending out their armies to fight and pillage the enemy. David sent out Joab and the army, but he stays back in Jerusalem. He's walking around on the roof of the palace, sees Bathsheba, and she's beautiful. He lusts after her, wants to be with her and not to play dominoes. He sends for her and has her brought, and he has sex with her. Some time passes, and she sends a message back to him. "I am with child." David now has a problem. Bathsheba's husband, Uriah, is a soldier. He's off fighting for Israel. So David concocts a plan. Bring Uriah home. Let him take a break from fighting, and he'll surely make love to his wife, and he won't know the better. Uriah won't know that it wasn't his child, his own child. Uriah messes up this plan because he refuses to go to his bed and be with his wife because he believes it's not right, because the ark is still in the tent and the men are still on the field. So he's like, how can I do that when the men don't get to do that? And so David cranks it up a notch, gets him drunk, thinking if he's drunk, he won't make that noble decision again. He won't know what he's doing. He'll go back home and make love to his wife. But again, Uriah refuses to go back. So David gets more desperate. Sends Uriah back to the battlefield. Has Uriah carry his own death sentence. A note to the commander Joab to put Uriah in a situation where he's most assuredly going to get killed. Uriah does indeed get killed, and after a while David has Bathsheba brought to him, and she becomes his wife and bears him a son. We are going to be looking at the next chapter, but before we do that, I just want to draw out a few points from this chapter, chapter 11. First point, sin often breeds more sin. Started with lust, it ended in murder. Is that not the storyline of nearly episode of Dateline or 48 Hours or any of those shows that are on, at nighttime? Second point, sin doesn't happen in a vacuum. David didn't go to battle. He had time on his hands. He was bored, who knows? Perhaps he was feeling down on himself. He was in his mid-50s now. Maybe he didn't feel as strong and vibrant as he once did. I don't know, but he did not go to battle as he should have, and he's at home, and he's walking around on his roof, and he is in a setup to sin. I think we all probably know the situations that are dangerous for ourselves. Do we avoid them? There's an old AA parable of a man walking down a street who falls in a hole. You may know this story. If you look it up online afterwards, you'll realize, as I did, there's about 700 different versions of it, so I'm going to go with this version of it. Chapter 1, a man walks down the street. There's a hole there. He doesn't see it, and he falls in. Chapter 2, a man walks down the street, sees the hole, but he falls in. Chapter 3, man walks down the street, sees the hole, tries to walk around it, and he falls in. Chapter 4, man walks down the street, sees the hole, walks around it, he looks back at it, and he falls in. Chapter 5, man walks down the street, sees the hole, he loudly proclaims to himself and others, that is a hole, which would have made his counselor happy. But he says, that's a hole, and he still falls in. Chapter 6, man walks down a different street. The point being is sometimes we know the situations that we're in danger of sinning and we just put ourselves right back in that same situation. Sin doesn't happen in a vacuum. Next one, point, the powerful temptation to hide sin. David, after the affair, could have confessed. After the pregnancy revelation, he could have confessed. After Uriah refused to go to be with his wife, he could have confessed. He didn't. Why not? David was king. His throne probably would have survived. Why did he not confess? Most likely because he knew he had done a very shameful thing. Shame hates exposure to the light, which is interesting because that's what heals it. There is a powerful temptation to hide sin, but unfortunately that's what keeps sin alive in our lives. This next point may be just for me, but maybe some of you do this too. One thing that automatically rose up in me when I was reading this story is how? Why? Like, how could he do this? Another way of saying it, how could he be so stupid? Like, how could he do this? And similarly, when it's another leader does something like this, what? Like, how could they do this? And it's interesting if you think about that mindset, what that implies. Two things I landed on. One is that a leader shouldn't be a sinner. That's one thing it can communicate. The other thing it can communicate is, I would not do that. I would not be that stupid. The fourth point coming out of this is, we're often real smart about other people's sins and real dumb about our own. Yeah, I see that all the time in my own life. The last point I want to make about this section before we move on is trying to answer the question, why did he do this? Why did David do this? Obviously, lust was a part of the slippery slope. He wanted what he wanted. Idle time on his hands set him up for this. In addition, the text gives us, I think, a hint of part of the potential problem that was going on, and that is the verb sent. It's the most used verb in the first couple of paragraphs. David sent Joab to war. David sent someone to find out about Bathsheba. David sent messengers to get Bathsheba. David sent word to Joab commanding him to send Uriah. There are two problems with this word sent and how it reflects on how David was living. One is it reinforces pride and selfishness. I can get what I want when I want it, and it's easy. Second, it disconnects you from your decisions. If you are making decisions and somebody else is doing all the legwork for you, it can disconnect you. If David himself had to walk down and check out who this Bathsheba was, there's a good chance on that walk he would have figured out, I shouldn't be doing this. But when he can just say, somebody go, get her for me, it makes it a much more dangerous situation. Some years back, I wrote an article called The Success Affair for a publication for pastors. It was about a phenomenon I saw at Marble Retreat, and that was that pastors who have affairs, most often it's when ministry is going great, not when it's going tough, when it's struggling. You would think it'd be the opposite, perhaps, that a pastor who's in a situation where it's really difficult, he might medicate with an affair to feel better. But actually the opposite was true. A lot of the pastors who came to Marble Retreat who got caught in an affair, they were like, why did I do this? It was going great. It was finally, where I wanted to be at. One of the reasons is pride gets in the way, and plus they got used to getting what they wanted. David has settled into being king. He's used to getting what he wants when he wants it. He sees Bathsheba and he wants her. The verb sent tells us a lot about how David was operating at this point in time. But then Bathsheba sent word. She can play this game too. I am pregnant. And that changed a lot. But there is a deeper, I think, reason that is driving David besides the sent thing. David had most certainly drifted away from God for a period of time. For whatever reasons we do not know, including what we were just talking about, David is not walking closely with God as he had been. He couldn't be and be okay with what he was doing. David has been overall great at letting God be God and God be the real king, but he's temporarily made himself the real king in his life. And we must not forget Satan's hand in all of this. If David was on a slippery slope away from God, you can be sure that the devil was pushing the sled. If David was beginning to justify and rationalize his own selfishness, you can be sure Satan was feeding him the lines. If David was beginning to believe his own hype, you can believe that Satan was his spin doctor. So Uriah is dead. Bathsheba is David's wife. Case closed. David got away with it. But what was that last line in that chapter? Do you remember? Yes. What David had done displeased the Lord. To me, this is a very scary verse in some ways. But it's really good, and we'll get to why it's good. When I lived in Peoria, Illinois, I played in a hockey league. I was a hospice chaplain, and I know I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again. I was playing in a hockey league, and most of the players there knew I was the hospice chaplain. Peoria is not a huge town, but it's small enough you kind of get to know everybody. And I had worked with about 1,000 folks who had died, so I was in a lot of houses and got to know a lot of people. And I was playing in this league, and it's playoffs. And I go in offside on a play, and I happen to score. And it doesn't get seen, and it doesn't get called. And it gets to count as a goal. I'm skating back to my bench, past the other bench, and one of the players on that bench said, God saw that. The ref didn't see it, but God saw it. He was probably right. God probably saw it. I don't think God really cared, but he probably saw it. God did care about David's sin, and he cares about ours as well. It's kind of scary. There's truly nothing done in secret. As much as we want to fool ourselves, nothing is done in secret. Chapter 2 of the story, or more specifically chapter 12, starts with this. The Lord sent Nathan to David. God cared that David was out of line. So God sent Nathan, the prophet, to David. Nathan tells David a story. And this is the story. There was a rich man who had many sheep and cattle. There's also nearby a poor man who had one little ewe that he dearly loved, even slept in his arms and was like a daughter to him. The rich man had a visitor come, and it was a hospitable culture, so what you do is you make a meal when a visitor comes. He didn't want to use one of his own animals to feed the visitor, so he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and he prepared it for dinner. Again, Nathan is telling David this story. David's reaction was immediate and strong. As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for the lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. Before we take the next step to go on where Nathan gut punches David, let's pause just for a moment on this. Why is David so upset about the story? Definitely his own guilt could be at play, but he hasn't really put that together quite yet. What's another reason? I think because this story violates a lot of David's core values. Throughout the stories we've looked at David, he's often been just and generous and compassionate towards those who have little. These values are being tromped on in this story, so David is mad. Mad enough, he makes a vow that this guy should die, even though the law at that time only required the guy pay back fourfold. It was David who came up with a he needs to die part. I want to pause on this for a moment because this is included for a reason for all of us, I think. We are all in danger of doing exactly what David is doing here. Being moralistic and judgmental about what someone else is doing wrong because it violates a value of ours. But we can be doing the same thing in our own lives and ignoring that we are doing the same thing. A silly example, I like justice. I like fairness. When I went offside in the hockey game, did I complain to the refs that they missed a call? No, I didn't. Should you take that goal back? I shouldn't have got. No. If somebody in the other team went offside and scored a goal, who would be the first one barking about it? Me. Isn't that interesting how that works? Sticking with it, it's powerfully deceiving how self-centered we are and how it influences how we see things. Sticking with the hockey analogy, if refs call penalties against your team or they miss calling a perceived penalty against your team, fans are quick to say, bad officiating. Refs cost us the game. Amen, brother. I know. Yeah. But if the calls were favorable to your team, this is what I've heard fans say over and over again. They're just letting them play. I like it. They just letting them play, So if we're losing, cries for fairness and justice. If we're winning, que sera, sera, just the way it goes. When others sin, I want justice. When I sin, I want grace. Okay, back to the gut punch. Nathan tells David this story. David's really upset about it. Nathan is good at what he does. He says, you're the man. You are the man. And then Nathan goes on to share how David is the man. God has said, I anointed you king. I delivered you from Saul. I gave you all his wives. I gave you Israel and Judah, and I would have given you more. But you went and you killed Uriah, and you took his wife. You despised me, and you did something that I despise. Ouch. David's response, I have sinned against the Lord. Short, contrite, and true. Nathan was showing David a kindness here, doing him a favor, helping him with a thorn that was in his soul. As mentioned earlier, we have to be careful in focusing on other people's sins and not our own. But if somebody points out a sin in your life, it is a good thing. God was doing a good thing for David in sending Nathan. Nathan was doing a good thing for David in confronting him. That raises the question, why does God care about our sin? Just to be clear, God is not some moralistic, angry referee who is watching us to screw up so he can throw us in the sin bin. God cares about our sin because he cares about us. And sin has three primary negative effects on us. One, it separates us from him. And that is not what he wants or we want. Two, it hurts us and those around us, even if it's in secret. Three, and it's not us leading our best lives, who we were designed to be. David was not made to be a womanizing murderer. That is not why God created him. He was made to be a man of integrity, a man who walked with God, a leader who brought other people to God. In a moment, we're going to look at David's response to getting caught and convicted of his sin, but a couple of lessons I'm going to land on quickly here from his interaction with Nathan. One is there's negative consequences to sin, but we do not have to pay the price of sin if we have God's forgiveness. When David gets honest and says, I have sinned against God, Nathan says to him, the Lord has taken away your sin, you are not going to die. The price of David's sin should have been death. God took that away, but David was still going to have to face some consequences, and it's true for us. We have forgiveness and grace through Christ, but there are still consequences. Two, your family will often pay a price for your sin. One of David's sons will commit a sexual sin against his stepsister. Another of David's sons will sleep with David's concubines in broad daylight. And of course, David and Bathsheba's son pays the ultimate price of his life as a consequence of their sin. God cares too much about David to let him off the hook with this sin. So he sends Nathan. Nathan nails David. David gets it. His response is captured in Psalm 51, an incredible psalm that we probably should read fairly regularly. I'm going to hit on just a few verses on it today as we move towards wrapping up. Verse 1, have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion. Blot out my transgressions. Wash away all my iniquity. Cleanse me from my sin. David knows there's only one who can take away his sin, and that is God. David states it's out of God's love and compassion that he would do so. Going on, for I know my transgressions, and my sin is always before me. Against you, you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. So you are right in your verdict and justified when you judge. David acknowledges his sin and that God is right and he is wrong. Ultimately, when we do not admit our sin, we are saying we are right, God is wrong. And God's like, you're right, I'm wrong. Then he goes on to say, let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice. What a powerful line. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice. David trusts this is all for good. He trusts that God's discipline is for his good. Create in me a pure heart, O God. Renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. David is asking God to purify his heart and to renew his steadfast spirit, the spirit that desires to walk with God. Do not cast me from your presence or take your spirit from me. David knows that the ultimate price of sin is separation from God, and he does not want that. He desires to walk and be close to God. And then verse 17, my sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. You, God, will not despise. What David did, God said, you despised me and you did something I despise. David flips that around and says, this you won't despise, a repentant heart. And David is right. God does not despise a repentant heart. He embraces it, he forgives it, and shows grace to it. Let us pray.